What makes a survivor? Is it the ability to insert one's head into a lion's mouth, tickle the little fella, and still come away unscathed? Or does it just take a splash of red paint? Maybe it's all that nonsense and more. I'm your narrator Benji, and this is Arkham Horror, the card game. Today we go full microscope on the first three survivors sent to the printers: Wendy Adams, Ashcan Pete and William Yorick, giving comparative grades to each investigator for both solo and multiplayer viability. So Wendy, you little urchin you, why do you look so weak, yet Arkham so strong? A desolate upbringing she may have had, but that's only prepared her for the grim and macabre. Don't let her wall of mechanical text fool you. She's got most of this investigator lark down pat. A perfect advert for what survivors were going to bring to the table. And so to her stat line, which is solid as a rock if you squint your eyes just so that you can't quite see the combat stat. Still, 4 willpower is more than enough for most of what the encounter deck has to offer. 3 intellect is solid, if unspectacular, and 4 agility is more than enough to stay on your tippy toes and 1 step ahead of non-hunter enemies. Let's just hope, pray, and find a way to get around her laughable combat stat, which on the face of things would struggle even with a swarm of rats. Her signature ability is a corker though. Having native Chaos Bag protection and mitigation is well worth the sacking of a card for. There really is nothing more impactful than the Chaos Bag when it comes to luck, playing a part in success and failure. So if you use this wisely and with only a modicum of caution, you can stack the odds in your favour. Simply do not underestimate the potency of this ability. Oh, and a nickel's worth of free advice: if the odds were stacked against you the first time you pulled out a token, they'll still be stacked against you a second time. We then have her signature card, her trusty amulet, which is also very nice. Putting aside the fan-dabby-dozy 2 wild skill icons, this allows you to play events back to back, which, so long as you deck build to synergise with it, is a pretty stellar ability. Not only are there many events you might want to double up on, you can also place this in the bin with her signature ability, and then cast it from there. Furthermore, it's fairly forgiving in terms of where it is in the discard pile. So long as there's no events on top of what you want to play, job's a good un. Her weakness, abandoned and alone, is pretty vanilla. It gives you a bit of a fright, empties your bin for you, and then throws itself in the bin. Don't get me wrong, that ain't fun, but when I say vanilla, I mean you just deal with it and move on. There's always more event cards. Her off-class deck building choices really do push her firmly towards evasion over combat. So there's not a great deal of help you'll find here in terms of conventional ways of punching fugglies in the mush. But there's still a baseline amount if you want to prop that combat stat up. And of course, having access to Leo DeLuca makes every investigator turn that frown upside down. This all adds up to a very strong character, but one with a very obvious weakness that, to be fair, this far into the game's life cycle and considerable card pool, is an easier gap to plug than it's ever been. That being said, she's an investigator with a fairly high skill ceiling. So I'm going to hedge my bets and give her a B for solo viability and the same B for multiplayer. She's just so strong in the right hands, and you can pop off with some super powerful turns with both her signature ability and card. But what she can rely on in that instance is a decent amount of card draw to smooth out the combo-like nature of her playstyle. And so from an urchin to a drifter, the name's Pete, Ashcan Pete, a guitar playing, canine loving, cowboy hat toting son of a gun. A much more scattergun approach to an investigator's power level he may bring, and that health sanity combination definitely gives pause for thought. Or does it? let's dig a little deeper and find out what's under the hood. His stat line is subpar at best, but as you'll come to discover, his furry best friend, aka his signature card, is meant to act as an extension of his stat line, which leads us to say that the willpower of 4 is welcome, and will address the quite frankly dog tier intellect and combat, as I've already mentioned, and say, okay, thanks you very much for the middling agility. I would also say don't stare too longingly at the god-awful health and sanity, at least until we get to the bigger picture. And that bigger picture looks very much like a loyal hound named Duke, which is just about one of the best signature cards in the entire game. And for good reason. Without this card starting in play, old PD would struggle to get invited to the Investigator's Christmas party. But, and alas, he does, and we should be thankful for that. So, if we do consider Duke as part of one whole, then this buffs Ashcan's health and sanity up to a 7/7, assuming you want the dog to stay alive. But it also once per turn gives you a base combat or intellect of 4. Clearly, the pup gets knackered easily. Wait, is he licking blood? Is Duke secretly a vampire pooch, and his master a 400-year-old investigator in the dark type fella? Probably not, but that's still a bit messed up. Anyway, +1 damage, good. 4 combat is a touch more forgiving than 4 intellect, but the investigate action comes with a free move action, which is one way of receiving the gift of action economy. I gotta say though, once per turn on this effect screams solo investigating, where the clues are fewer and far between. But wait, what's that? Yes, we are indeed in Segway City, as his signature ability allows you to bin a card to give Duke another go at exsanguinating floorboards. Good, crisp, clean, wholesome fun that is. I mean, using the doggy's ability twice, what more can I say about it? Oh yeah, it's any asset you can ready, so if your furry pal got left behind, it can be any exhaustible asset that takes its place. His weakness, racked by nightmares, is the I'm going to take away some of your turn now card that takes your tempo, nothing more, nothing less. His off-class deck building choices of 5 level 0 cards of any class really does round out his package nicely. Think of how many nice cards each class has access to at the start of a campaign, and then think about how good this can be and the options it makes available to you. Remember that Duke changes his base combat and intellect to 4, so any pluses to those stats sets you up perfectly. I was and still am a big fan of the design of Ashcan Pete. It's not necessarily terribly innovative, but thematically and mechanically it just works. The survivor class is probably the most forgiving when Duke is tapped out because of all the victory from the jaws of defeat cards you have access to. And unlike a number of investigators, his plus damage and mobility means he's good to go straight out the gates, giving him a very clear A for solo viability. That being said, his contributions can be moderately diluted in multiplayer, warranting a B for when it's more than a table for one. Oh, and even his elder sign is noteworthy. Anyone fancy readying Duke twice in one turn? Hell yeah, doggo. Finally for today is the Path to Carcosa's William Yorick, who has rather seamlessly allowed us to transition from acoustic busking to digging graves. Yep, old William got fed up of getting turned down for acting roles and decided instead to perform for the dead. What he does seem good at on the face of things though is dealing with things the punch first, talk later way. His stat line is bookended by a just about acceptable 3 willpower and a useful in a pinch 3 agility. But that's not where the real discussion lies. You have the yin and the yang with his intellect of 2 and combat of 4. Quite honestly, no matter how hard you try, our William is not going to be gobbling up clues like Columbo. But what he does have is a particular set of skills that revolve around depriving enemies of their basic motor functions. And 4 is the minimum you'd expect from this predilection. His signature ability is one that at first glance leaves you scratching your head, but as soon as you come to realise assets often find themselves in the discard pile, with this spiffy ability you can get them back when you defeat an enemy. Yes, that makes it a teensy bit situational and will shine a little brighter in multiplayer, but getting back weapons with ammo or cheapo health and sanity soak, even when you have to pay for it, brings a great deal of consistency to his combat capabilities. The signature card Bury Them Deep is campaign tempo in a text box. And if there were any doubt at this point that William likes his fist to do the talking, then this card puts that little rumination to bed. This is a really good card. We'll of course ignore how pointless it is in standalone mode, but over the course of a campaign, the amount of free XP that this should generate you can make you quite the powerhouse as you progress through each scenario. His weakness, on the other hand, Graveyard Ghouls, should act as another set of lambs to the slaughter that has the added reverse benefit of synergising with his signature ability and card. But an average 2 actions plus any failures is still less than ideal, especially if you draw it early enough when you're not set up. We'll put this one in the category of average nuisance. In an unsurprising turn of events, his off-class deck building choices are those of the level 0 to 2 Guardian variety. Ironically, those survivors aren't entirely bereft of weapon choices, so these Guardian choices may be best suited for direct damage and tanking cards. Suggesting, or maybe just hinting, that Graveman Yorick is a man who likes the part of Johnny Bodyguard for his comrades. Which leaves us to say that William is almost, and I say almost, a typical Guardian, or at least an upside down one where he only gets to splash blue bordered cards. He can just about do a job on his lonesome, but only enough with his lack of consistent clue gathering abilities to warrant a C. Things look up in multiplayer, however, where he is more than viable and worthy of an A. You need someone to tank damage in horror and dish out a paddling, then Bill's your man. So there you have it, our review of the A, B and C, 1, 2 and 3 of Survivors. You can already see that their strengths lie only on the periphery of straight up clue gathering or axe swinging, and like to approach things from a different angle. That, as they say though, is all for now. Stay tuned for numeros 4, 5 and 6. I've been Benji, and this is him telling you that this video has ended.